Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're handing you the ultimate playbook for communicating complex technical and academic work. If you've ever struggled to translate your brilliant code, a really robust system architecture, or groundbreaking research into a presentation that actually connects with your audience, well, you are in the exact right place. We're going to break down exactly how to structure, visualize, and deliver your message so it lands perfectly every single time. Let's get into it. Okay, let's dive into this. Why is it that right around minute 6 of a pitch or an academic talk, eye contact suddenly drops, cell phones magically appear, and senior executives just completely tune out? It's a massive, universal pain point in the technical world. And honestly, it happens way more often than we'd like to admit. And I think this quote from Tosea.ai really hits the nail on the head. Brilliant science, flawless code, a perfectly optimized database migration, literally none of it matters if your presentation fails to connect with the people in the room. The smartest person in the room often struggles the absolute most, mostly because they assume the data will just speak for itself. But spoiler alert, it never does. Which brings us to the most common trap out there, the 5-audience problem. One of our sources shared this painfully relatable story about a PostgreSQL database migration pitch. Basically, an engineer walks into a room with the executive team and uses the exact same 30-slide Kubernetes deck they'd used with their engineering buddies. They're going deep into stateful set configurations and operators. And what happened? Well, the CEO interrupts by slide 3 asking about cost reductions. The CFO jumps in by slide 5 asking for the ROI. And by slide 7, the CTO's asking about rollback risks. The pitch was completely dead in the water. Using one deck for everyone is an absolute guaranteed way to fail. Section 1, tailoring to your audience. So I'm going to challenge you right now to step completely out of your expert shoes and step directly into the shoes of your specific stakeholders. You literally have to map out exactly who is in the room before you draft a single slide. If you're talking to the engineering team, great. Use their language, code, architecture, trade-offs. But if you're speaking to the VP of engineering, they only care about velocity and resources, so your language has to shift to metrics and timelines. Product teams, they want user experience and capabilities. And executives are looking squarely at business value, risk, and ROI. If you structure your deck without knowing who sits in which column, you are setting yourself up to fail. Let's look at an agentic AI platform pitch as the perfect example. It's the exact same project, but with entirely different framing. Pitching to engineers. You're geeking out over LangGraph orchestration, vector databases, intelligent gateways. But to executives, you don't mention a single word of that. You tell them that a $150K investment yields a $500K annual return and speeds up development by 67%. It's the identical system. You're just translating its value into the native language of the listener. Moving on to Section 2, structuring your time. Strictly structuring your time is a real game changer for saving a presentation from falling apart. The most common failure mode, especially for academics and researchers, is treating a 15-minute conference talk like a squished-down 60-minute thesis defense. In a defense, you've got an expert audience, maybe 60 slides, and you have to defend every single methodological choice. But a conference talk, that's a mixed audience, a strict limit of around 12 slides, and your only real goal is communicating your core contribution clearly. If you just compress a 60-minute talk into 15 minutes, you strip away all the helpful context and just leave this dense, unreadable mess. So how do you actually pace a 15-minute talk? You use the industry standard 3-4-6-2 ratio. That's 3 minutes for motivation, 4 for methods, 6 for results, and 2 for discussion. What you absolutely need to take away from this is that motivation slice. 3 minutes is the absolute minimum you can defend, because if your motivation is weak or rushed, senior faculty and industry peers are going to tune out immediately, even if your methods are completely flawless. They need to know why your work matters before they care about how you did it. And that brings us directly to the methodology trap. This right here is exactly why the phones come out at minute 6. A presenter gets anxious that their methods will be judged, so they try to preempt every possible question. They cram every parameter, every single pre-processing step, and every hyperparameter into a massive wall of text. The audience just wanted to know if they could trust your numbers, and instead you gave them a textbook. It's instant disengagement. So here is your golden rule to avoid that trap. 2. That's it. That is the absolute maximum number of method slides allowed in a 15-minute talk. You use one slide for a clean visual summary of what you did, and one slide highlighting the 2 or 3 critical design choices you made. Everything else, toss it in the appendix. Section 3, visualizing complex systems. Now, when words fail to convey technical depth, precise visual mapping is your absolute best friend. According to Geeks for Geeks, there are 5 essential tools for this. We've got conceptual, component, and deployment architectures, followed by sequence and data flow diagrams. Picking the exact right one for your specific audience is essentially a cheat code to prevent slide clutter and confusion. Let's break these down real quick. First up, conceptual versus component diagrams. A conceptual diagram is your high-level bird's-eye view. It's perfect for non-technical stakeholders who really just need to see how the core system talks to users or external services. But show that to a developer, and they're going to ask for more. That's when you bust out the component diagram, which acts as an internal blueprint breaking down all the modules, APIs, and interfaces. Next, we have deployment versus sequence diagrams. If the architecture viewboard is grilling you on where things live and how they scale, you show them a deployment diagram, mapping out your AWS EC2 instances and databases. On the flip side, if you need to debug a complex workflow or explain chronological order, like a user login process bouncing between an API gateway and an auth service, a sequence diagram brilliantly illustrates that time-based interaction. Finally, we have the data flow diagram, or DFD. This maps the entire journey of data from an external source through processing right into storage. Why does this matter? Well, if you're sitting in front of a security review board or compliance officers, this is the exact visual you need to prove your system actually handles data governance, privacy, and security the right way. And finally, Section 4, nailing the delivery. Because listen, a brilliantly structured slide deck still requires a stellar performance. The biggest cause of a bad talk usually isn't that science or bad code, it's that the presenter only practiced once, silently, in their head, on the morning of the presentation. Don't do that. Here is the 4-stage rehearsal plan you need to adopt. 1 week out, record yourself solo to check timing. 5 to 7 days out, present to colleagues to catch where the energy drops or slides get confusing. 2 to 3 days out, get a senior review to make sure you aren't underselling your contribution. And the day before, get into the actual venue with the actual clicker to test the screen, no exceptions. And here's a secret weapon that really separates the pros from the amateurs. 10 to 30. That is the ideal number of backup slides you should have ready to go. Think of this as your invisible infrastructure. When someone asks about a really specific robustness check or why you didn't use an alternative dataset, you just hit a button and pull up a slide proving you already did the work. It makes you look incredibly prepared. And those backup slides flow perfectly into your Q&A strategy. First, anticipate those predictable questions. Second, and actually this is a brilliant tactical move, always repeat the question out loud. Yes, it makes sure everyone heard it, but more importantly, it buys your brain 5 precious seconds to actually formulate an answer. Third, answer concisely in 30 seconds and then stop talking. Remember, a long, rambling answer signals defensiveness and eats up time, but a short, punchy answer, that signals total confidence. Which brings us to our final provocative thought for this explainer: the AI platforms, the orchestrators, the software, the research equipment. The science and the code belong to the tools. But who does the communication belong to? It belongs entirely to you. You have the power to step into your audience's shoes, structure your time ruthlessly, visualize complex ideas clearly, and deliver them flawlessly. Your work deserves to be understood. Now go out there and make them listen.